Hello and welcome to On Point Tutorial channel. Please, if you are new on the channel, subscribe to the channel as more videos will be posted on the channel. Thank you very much. So we are going to look at utility maximization, but limit ourselves to the cardinalist approach of utility maximization. By the end of the lesson, we should know the meaning of utility maximization, assumptions of utility maximization, comparing utilities, using the cardinalist approach, some assumptions of the cardinalist approach, equilibrium of the consumer under the cardinalist approach, and lastly, some criticisms of the cardinalist approach. So to begin with utility maximization, consumers or individuals purchase goods in order to derive some benefits or pleasure from the good. No individual will purchase a good and expects to derive a less benefit from the good. And so, utility is defined as the satisfaction that consumers derive from the consumption of an item, activities they engage in, or services they use. Therefore, utility maximization, to maximize utility, is to attain the highest possible satisfaction from the consumption of a commodity. Now, let's consider some assumptions of utility maximization. So, in studying utility maximization, the consumer is assumed to be rational. A rational consumer is the one whose actions are predictable and sensible. Next one is that the consumer is also assumed to take rational decision and a purposeful one that yield the best outcome. The consumer faces an income constraint, meaning that the consumer's income is limited. And lastly, based on the limited income and the prices of commodities, the consumer will spend so that he realizes the highest satisfaction. Now, comparing utilities. Before a consumer chooses one basket at the expense of the other, then the consumer should be able to compare, or the consumer compares the satisfaction that he derives from the different market baskets. So in order to attain the highest possible satisfaction, the consumer must be able to compare utility that can be derived from the different market baskets of goods which can be bought with the consumer's income. In comparing utilities, two approaches are used, and the first one is the cardinalist approach. We also have the ordinalist approach. But as I said earlier, in this tutorial, we are going to talk about the cardinalist approach of utility maximization. This approach was used by a great economist, Alfred Marshall. Cardinal utility means consumers could measure the satisfaction derived from the consumption of any good or services in terms of a number. So this school of thought states that utility can be measured in monetary terms. That is utils. So utils is the amount of money that the consumer sacrifices in order to attain another unit of a commodity. Here are the assumptions of the cardinalist approach: rationality, cardinal utility, constant marginal utility of money. That is, the value of money is held constant so that it will provide a constant measurement. We also have diminishing marginal utility, a law which states that as more and more of a commodity is consumed, the satisfaction derived from it will increase to a point and eventually diminish. Now, let's establish the equilibrium of the consumer under the cardinalist approach. So, considering a single commodity, we say that the consumer is in equilibrium when the marginal utility of the goods, let's say X, is equal to its price, Px. So, mathematically, MUX equals Px. Now, if MUX is greater than Px, then the consumer can be in equilibrium by purchasing more units of X. This is because by purchasing more units of X, the MU of X being greater will eventually diminish to a point where it will be equal to its price, Px. Now, what about when MU of X is less than Px? Let's justify that. Now, this table shows utility maximization of a consumer or equilibrium condition under the cardinalist approach for a single commodity. So, as I said earlier, for the single commodity, the consumer is in equilibrium when the marginal utility of the commodity is equivalent or equal to the price of the commodity. So these are the units of the commodity. We have the marginal utility and then the price. At the output level 4, it can be seen that the marginal utility of the commodity was 25 as well as the price being 25. Therefore, we say that the consumer is in equilibrium. This is for a single commodity, and it is illustrated in the diagram below. Now, the cardinalist approach equilibrium of the consumer considering multiple commodity case. We are saying that the consumer is in equilibrium when the ratios of the marginal utilities of the individual commodities to their respective prices are equal. So mathematically, mu of x over px equals mu of y over py, which is also equal to mu of z over pz. This is a 3 commodity case. Now, if mu of x over px is greater than mu of y over py, then the consumer can be in equilibrium by purchasing more of x or less of y. This is because when more of x is purchased and consumed, the marginal utility of the product x will increase to a certain level and eventually diminish to a point whereby the ratio of mu of x to its price will be equal to the mu of y to its price. Same applies to when less of y is purchased. When less of y is purchased, then the marginal utility of the y will increase to a point where it will equate that of the x. This diagram also illustrates the equilibrium condition of the consumer under the cardinalist approach, considering 2 commodities. So this is the income of the consumer, that is $11, and this is the equilibrium condition. We have the price of the consumer being $2 for pizza, and the price for shakes is $1. These are the various quantity levels. This is marginal utility of pizza, marginal utility of pizza divided by its price, marginal utility of shakes, and then marginal utility of shakes divided by its price. Now, we have different levels whereby marginal utility of pizza is equal to that of marginal utility of the shakes divided by their respective prices. For example, at the output 2, the marginal utility of pizza over its price was 40, and as well as that of shakes. When you consider output 3 and 4, the marginal utilities of both products were same, that is 30-30. When you consider outputs 4 and 6, the marginal utilities of the product were the same, that is 20-20. So which of the combinations will help maximize the consumer's satisfaction? Now, the combination that will maximize the consumer satisfaction when there are different combinations is the one that will maximize the combination that will maximize the consumer's equilibrium as well as exhausting the consumer's income. So for the 40, the unit for X, that is pizza, was 2, and that of shakes was 2. When they are multiplied by their respective prices, it gives $6, which is not equal to $11. The second one, which is 32, the unit of pizza was 4, and that of shakes was 3, giving $11, which meets the consumer's income. When you consider the ratio 20, 6 units of pizza and then 4 units of shakes, when they are multiplied by their respective prices, it gives 16, which is not equal to the $11. Therefore, the consumer must combine 4 units of pizza and 3 units of shakes in order to maximize his or her satisfaction. Now, let's look at the criticisms of the cardinalist approach. There is no objective measure for satisfaction one derives from consumption. So the cardinalist approach is not realistic, because satisfaction that people derive from commodities they consume is a psychological feeling and therefore cannot be measured in terms of a number. Number 2, the assumption of constant utility of money is unrealistic, because the value of money changes as times change. And lastly, the axiom of diminishing marginal utility has been established from introspection, in the sense that it is dependent on individual subjective feeling, and therefore utility cannot be measured in terms of a number. So these are the various criticisms of utility maximization under the cardinalist approach. Thank you very much.